Trump echoing Hitler's final solution rhetoric. Mark Sumner writing about this over at Daily Kos, and it's a great piece. It's well worth reading. For this, he says this has become a tradition in American politics, the one where major media outlets fixate on some perceived flaw in a Democratic candidate while ignoring a Republican threatening to bring on an end of the Republic. And this time, Mark Sumner notes, with a side order of World War III. Trump spoke at an NRA event Friday night last week, and besides bragging that during his time at the White House, I did nothing to control guns in any way, right? He also promised a door-to-door effort to collect migrants and put millions of them in enormous detention camps within moments. That's a verbatim quote, within moments of taking office. He also said we don't know who they is, presumably the globalists that he says he's going to take out. Globalists is typically right-wing code language for Jews. He says they would change Pennsylvania's name, and he added he had personally witnessed a migrant stealing a refrigerator. Really? How do you do that? How do you steal a refrigerator? I don't know. Anyhow, the most frightening thing, I mean, Trump, maybe he's never seen a refrigerator. You know, he's lived a rich man's life. He's always had, cooks and chefs and people who bring the food to him, and probably never walks into the kitchen. I doubt he has any idea how much a refrigerator weighs. But Sumner points out the most frightening thing of all is silence of the American press. And I think that this is, a really important point. And it's absolutely true. That, you go back to 11 days before the 2016 election, the front page of the New York Times, the top half, above the fold, was 3 stories about Hillary's emails because of James Comey's press conference. I mean, Comey's press conference sabotaged Hillary Clinton and handed the White House to Donald Trump, along with all of the, I believe it was over 100 million impressions. I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers that were generated in social media by the
So what I wanted to say is that I think that Biden should revisit the idea of declaring a no-fly zone over Ukraine for two reasons. So one is obviously it would give him a way to go around the Republican obstruction in Congress for funding Ukraine. That's a big one. But two, I believe that if we had a no-fly zone over Ukraine, it would force America to cross swords with Russia, which would make it really tough for our pro-fascist, autocratic MAGA types to continue openly supporting Ukraine.
You mean openly supporting Putin?
Or, yes, openly supporting Putin. It'd almost be the same thing that FDR did, because we had a very pro-fascist movement back in FDR's day, and then once we got involved in World War II, it forced our pro-fascist movement to cross swords with Germany's pro-fascist movement.
Right, and they had to shut up and get quiet. But I don't think that starting World War III is the best way to shut up the right-wingers in America that way, respectfully.
You know, we're getting to a point where we need to distract them with something, because if we don't stop them from looking inwardly at an enemy with them looking outwardly at an enemy, we could be in real trouble in this next election cycle. Yeah. And I know how draconian that sounds. I get it.
Yeah.
But these are desperate times.
Well, there is a long history of people, I mean, the Roman Empire is probably the most famous collection of stories of leaders doing this, but Edward Gibbon's, I think, The Rise and Fall of the History of the Roman Empire, I forget the title. But that he talks about when things would go bad in the country, the emperor would the Caesar would figure out, some external war to have, come up with some new enemy and go off and conquer some new land. There's an argument made that the King of France was all gung-ho for the Crusades, in the 1100s because of domestic problems. And that was a way of getting the malcontents out of France and off to the Middle East. I understand your logic.
I believe FDR did the same thing, in a sense.
I think events kind of did that for him. I mean, I realize there are Republicans who think he provoked Pearl Harbor, but I'm skeptical.
But, I mean, Trump was always good at white rabbits, and in a sense, this would be one giant white rabbit. I mean, if America had to concentrate on an external enemy, I think we could maybe bury our pro-fascist movement for another 80 years. Yeah,
or it could be a black swan. I mean, keep in mind, Russia has as many nuclear weapons as we have for all practical purposes.
Right.
And right. Putin, if Putin's backed into a corner, or if he thinks he's on the verge of death and he's trying to leave some great legacy for himself or something like that, God only knows what could happen.
I don't disagree with you, but on the other hand, if he's allowed to swallow up Ukraine, God only knows what happens then.
That's a good point. Alan, thank you. We're not going to resolve this. But,
no, but food for thought.
Yeah, food indeed. Good conversation. Thank you very much.
We say fight back!
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give $20, it becomes $40. If you give $100, it becomes $200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting, Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States, because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President.
There you go. President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. We got a lot to talk about today. In our first hour, Congressman Mark Pocan, in just a moment, will be with us taking your calls for the hour in a National Progressive Townhall meeting, Middays with Mark. You can get in line right now to speak with Congressman Pocan by calling 202-808-9925, our call-in number. At the top of our second hour, Phil Ittner is going to drop by from Kyiv, Ukraine, and give us an update. The city was under attack last night by Russia. Republicans in Congress, of course, are still, still firmly have their lips attached to Vladimir Putin's ass, frankly. Also, is the New York Attorney General's office calling Trump's bluff? That in the second hour, we'll talk about that. And in the third hour, just when you thought Republicans couldn't get any crueler, now they're forcing women to have major unnecessary abdominal surgery. This is just a wild report out of Louisiana, but it's happening in several red states. Also, Russia has started arresting LGBTQ folks under their extremism laws. They just arrested two guys who ran a gay bar. And, these guys are looking at 10, 15 years in prison. This is what Hitler used to do. Also, why the Republican motion to subpoena Jared Kushner, or why the Democratic motion to subpoena Jared Kushner for, to answer his $2 billion Saudi cash deal, why that got killed by James Comer and Jim Jordan. So a lot to talk about today. But to start out, Congressman Mark Pocan is the former chair and current chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's a member in good standing, of course. He's also the co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. His website is Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. And Congressman, welcome back to the program. So nice to have you. What's on your mind this morning?
This is a week we may actually do the job we were supposed to do by last September 30th, which is get, the 12 budget bills done. We got 5 done a couple weeks ago. I think 2:48, I believe it was in the morning, they drafted the next 7. And hopefully we'll be taking that up Friday. It could be Saturday if some Republicans, play some games. Which would be after the midnight Friday deadline. So I'm hoping, I haven't seen anything yet if any Republicans are trying to throw a flag on this one, but then we have Rand Paul in the Senate maybe trying to. So maybe there'll be a very, very short shutdown. I'm not exactly sure yet, but at least that is done. And they had to do it with Democratic votes, which meant we went from 30 and 40% cuts to departments to, essentially flat funding the new, the new increased funding, because we're not in charge, but if they need our votes, there's a lot we've been able to do to make these bills a whole lot better. So that's most of my world since I serve on appropriations. We already got the president's budget for next year. We're ready to start this process all over. Usually there's a few months to breathe in between, but with this Republican majority, they're not so good at passing bills.
I understand that was it the Republican Study Committee or was it the Republican caucus itself in the House has introduced a budget proposal that would cut Social Security?
Yeah, and I believe they haven't done a budget bill in a while. And if they do, that is part of the proposal that's out there. And then on top of it, don't forget Donald Trump talked about this recently, too. So, we've been saying it, and I actually think we should say it a whole lot more, that Social Security is absolutely on the ballot in November. And as you know, things like Medicare as well. I mean, Medicare and Medicare Advantage, we know what'll happen if the Republicans are fully in control of things. Private insurance programs like Medicare Advantage will have a lot more flexibilities. We're finally at a point, thanks to actually many of your listeners in your program, Tom, where we've started to get more and more members involved on Medicare Advantage to be fighting back. I think Secretary Becerra is trying to do a lot of things. He's got some new rules proposed that will put some more serious clamps on the industry. But all of that's gone as well. So Social Security, Medicare, the most popular programs we do are on the ballot in November.
Wow, remarkable. All righty, so Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, 202-808-9925. Ready to pick up calls, Congressman?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, let's do it. Bob in Otis, Indiana, you are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey.
I'm having a bit of a problem finding something out here. I'm on have probably for over 20 years been on Hoosier Medicaid, and it looks like they're trying to privatize it in this state. They're changing us over to something they're calling Indiana Pathways for Aging. And if we don't sign up for one of 3 different programs, they're just going to put us on whichever one they choose. And the 3 programs, there's one with Anthem, one with Humana, and one with United Healthcare. And aren't those all private insurance agencies?
Yes. Congressman?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the situation in Indiana. We did hear on a call a couple of weeks back, Tom, remember someone mentioned about this privatizing that could be happening on Medicaid, and we've got to get a little more information on that. There's always a state Medicaid office and a federal. In Wisconsin, unfortunately, we're one of the 10 states that hasn't expanded Medicaid. So part of my questions yesterday to Secretary Becerra were around they're doing some things that are still going to be helpful to where we have a state like mine where we have a gerrymandered legislature, although we have new maps in fall, and hopefully that'll change. But where they haven't expanded Medicaid, they're doing some things to at least help kids in particular and others get around our ineffective legislature's problem with helping people in healthcare. But this is something I think, Bob, we got to find out a little more information on, because I can tell you from the Medicare experience in particular, Secretary Becerra said it on the open public record, Tom, that it's more costly than Medicare right now, Medicare Advantage. These private plans were intended to save money. They're doing just the opposite. We know there's $140 billion in overpayments on MA, for example. And we don't really need to take that idea to Medicaid without really some very, very, very close scrutiny.
Amen. Paul in Woodinville, Washington, you're on the air with Representative Pocan. Excuse me. Got distracted.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Representative Pocan, my question is this. When the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives again in the next election and we maintain control of the Senate, are Democrats in the House in particular ready, are you talking about, and are you ready to send a clear and certain message to the federal courts, including the Supreme Court, that we are not going to be playing these political games anymore, and that could start with some impeachment? I frankly think that an incendiary shot across the bow to the Supreme Court by impeaching Clarence Thomas would be a good start. And frankly, I think another candidate on the Supreme Court is Brett Kavanaugh, but federal judges, I think Aileen Cannon. who's clearly a ringer for Donald Trump, is another candidate. And we need to send a strong and clear message that the United States of America, the people of the United States of America, are not going to play this game. We don't have time for this kind of silliness, to quote Barack Obama.
Yeah, what would Republicans do if the shoe was on the other foot, Congressman?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, we've had a number of public conversations about the need for ethics, period, in the Supreme Court. They don't seem to really have much that they abide by. But I think you could be getting a little ahead of ourselves. The House, we're hoping to get the majority. The Senate, for sure Joe Manchin's seat is gone, right? That puts you at 50-50. But I just saw a poll in Maryland where former Governor Hogan was like 50-37 or something to the next two Democrats who are running in a primary. If you lose a state like Maryland, then suddenly you're going to have a Republican majority, and you still have Montana and Ohio to look at. So I think we've got work to do between now and November to make sure that we're able to do that. And then don't forget the Senate's rules are another issue. But having Senators Manchin and Sinema gone on that could be very helpful, because I think they've been people who've been the strongest supporters of filibuster rules. But I just don't want us getting too far ahead on anything, sitting back and talking about what we're going to do. While we should certainly have plans for that, we have to get to the position we can do that first. And I think that means everyone has to get active in making sure that we're having maybe some new faces in the House and the Senate, certainly by November.
Yeah. I think it's worth remembering that in the 1970s, Abe Fortas, when he was a private lawyer, had done some work for a fellow that who couldn't pay him. And after Fortas was put on the Supreme Court, the guy came into some money, and he wrote a $15,000 check to Abe Fortas for a legal fee from several years prior. That was the basis for Richard Nixon and Republicans in the House of Representatives starting impeachment hearings against Fortas, which caused him to resign from the Supreme Court. For a $15,000 payment for a legal fee, saying, it represents an appearance of impropriety. It's just incredible, the double standards that the GOP has.
I just want to make sure we actually are in a position where we're the ones doing any impeachment proceedings as necessary, and not.
Amen. Amen. I totally get it. 16 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls, Middays with Mark. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan at 202-808-9925 right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's talk media for the sane among us. We'll be right back with your calls for Representative Pocan. Stay with us. And welcome back. Nancy in Woodland, California. Hey, Nancy, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, good morning. I was glad to see that the president stopped the sale of the U.S. deal to Japan, although I like Japan. And I'm wondering, in the same vein, what about nationalizing the refinery in Texas that the Saudis own? It's the largest one in the United States. And just in general, I just don't like to see things like that being owned by foreign countries, no matter who they are. And so what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Congressman?
Is it not making noise?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I said I just didn't want to necessarily not answer the specific, but let me go a little bit higher to a 30,000 foot. Okay. This is one of the competing issues we have around here when it talks about foreign ownership, because I agree. I think there's Brazilian companies that do a lot of cattle processing, buying a lot of land, and a lot of others. And yet the Republicans want to just go after like Chinese interests. And a lot of it's pure political rhetoric and I think xenophobia. And so it becomes a little difficult how we deal with this in the House of Representatives. I don't know enough about the specific ownership issue of a refinery in Texas to tell you and what competing refineries, where they're owned, et cetera. However, I did want to mention that because that right now in egg land, for example, there's a lot of provisions by Republicans, proposals, I should say, to say if you're a Chinese company, you can't own farmland near an airport. And a lot of it is just honestly pure speculation and xenophobia. But yet I have been very outspoken on I don't want a lot of foreign ownership in our egg land, period. And that's not just China, that's actually Brazil, that's everywhere, because this is something that is all too important to our overall economy and to our farmers. So I just mentioned that, Nancy, because I do think that it gets a little trickier when we start to get to what's the 30,000-foot look of foreign ownership versus specific countries and specific industries.
Yeah, FYI, I wrote an op-ed about this a couple of weeks ago. The largest refinery in America is in Port Arthur, Texas. And in 2017, the Saudis announced their intention to buy it. Donald Trump did not object. He could have. And the Republicans in Congress did not object. The sale was completed in 2019 while Trump was still president. And, they just, along with the Russians, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, announced a pretty significant oil production cut. Between that and their ability to reduce the output of this is a 600,000 barrel of oil a day refinery. It's a massive amount of gasoline being produced for the United States. They have basically now the ability to control U.S. gasoline prices. And I'm predicting, and this is just me, that we're going to see $6 gasoline by November, and it's going to be a huge political issue.
Yeah, we're starting to see the crank up already a little bit, right, on gas. And, clearly there are a lot of interests, including some very specific foreign interests, who would much rather see Donald Trump there. I mean, whether it be Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, probably some of those.
Mohammed Bonsaw.
The Middle Eastern countries where they're doing business right now still with the Trump family, even when he's out of office.
Yep.
A lot to worry about.
Yeah. The Saudis are pouring cash at him with that Live Golf Tour, or at least they were. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in just a moment. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmanReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Malcolm in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Yes, Congressman, I hear a lot on this show, especially about Russia, and the impact they're having on our elections. But is anything being done with Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg? Because Cambridge Analytics was very real. We know how much money poured into the social media platforms. And YouTube just last week announced that with their platform, you have to flag AI content to let people basically know that it's AI generated. But all I see is Mark Zuckerberg look like a deer in the headlights before Congress while they have their hand on elections around the world. So what is the U.S. doing? And that's my question.
Yeah, Malcolm, and actually you bring up a very good point. In fact, the point I had last week when we were all in a tizzy over TikTok, something that could maybe potentially someday, if everything hit just right, happen and hadn't happened yet. Yet what was real and across all social media platforms are a number of common denominators, including the privacy of our data and how they sell it to companies. And this week, we have a bill up on suspension that should have came up the same time the TikTok bill, honestly. I think it would have made more sense, but it's up this week to try to actually address that. So we need to make sure that it not just goes through the House as a bipartisan bill, but the Senate and signed into law that starts to have some greater constraints on these social media companies, because right now they have too much power in giving away our privacy and our details, selling it to companies. And quite bluntly, Tom, this is the ironic part of last week. You know, even if we did shut down TikTok, which I think is many people's goals, the Chinese government can still buy from data brokers everything that they could have gotten anyway through TikTok under the current laws unless we change them, and that doesn't help anything. So we really didn't have much of a Band-Aid last week we were working on. But the bill this week is important, and I think would get to more of what Malcolm is raising.
Has there been any effort to require these social media companies to make public their algorithms?
I don't know, because that's not a committee of jurisdiction I have on this. I know that what we're trying to do right now is at least protect the data that they collect from us, so they can't just sell it to brokers in the way that they currently are. Because clearly, I mean, it is amazing. I mean, I know when my husband is shopping for something, if I'm looking on the same ISP address, because I'll get the ads for whatever, right? And it's instantaneous in how they sell those things. But that information could also be sold to people who might have less common interest as just trying to sell me something. And but I don't know the answer specifically if they've done anything on algorithms.
Yeah, because that's where the toxicity is coming from. I mean, that's where the teenage suicides and the driving people into extremism, that's all the algorithms. And
yeah, there's definitely, I've heard that from the hearings of the committees that have jurisdiction over this, that's come up. But I think the bills anyway before us were more dealing with the privacy of our data.
Okay. David in San Francisco, you're on the air with Representative Pocan. We just have a minute to a break.
Yeah, I can do it quick. The nonprofit status of things like the Heritage Foundation, the NRA, taking foreign money to do corrupt projects, I'm just wondering if there's a method to yank their nonprofit status.
I don't think there is under the current law. They're very, very careful on how they use this.
Exciting news. Today
and,
is the
those
first
groups have they're lawyered and accounted up pretty well, so they're prepared for it.
Drive.
But I hear this on groups like APAC as well, right, and other organizations. I do think that they're probably operating within the law, even if it's a gray zone of the law.
Do you know of any, specific complaints? I mean, the way to challenge that, wouldn't it be for people simply to file a complaint with the IRS?
They could, but it'd have to have enough standing and credible enough to actually then be considered rather than dismissed, because it's not like every suit's going to be looked at in the same way. Yeah. And in general, how they get the money, they're very careful. I mean, some of these folks, as you know, have been around this for a very long time.
Yeah, amen. Congressman Mark Pocan with us, Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls for the hour, Middays with Mark. We'll be right back on the other side of this break with more of your calls for Representative Pocan. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
You can find his website at pocan.house.gov, pocan.house.gov, and you can tweet him or X him or whatever at Rep. Mark Pocan. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give 20, it becomes 40. If you give 100, it becomes 200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket $240, the virtual meet and greet, $1,000, the hidden history book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States, because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President.
There you go. President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back, Congressman Mark Pocan, Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing the 3rd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives, with us for the hour, taking your calls, Middays with Mark. Daryl in St. Paul, Minnesota, listening on KTNF. Hey, Daryl, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, Tom and Representative Pocan. I was watching a show this morning and caught a little bit of the impeachment process in this committee for Joe Biden, and I'm wondering what can be done to end this sham.
I think what the Democrats are trying to do is call it out for just that, and I think, I don't think they're scoring a lot of points on this, especially after their one of their main witnesses proved to be a major fake, and I think that information is out there. But this is all they've got. They can't pass legislation because of their ineptness of their caucus. So it's either censure resolutions, impeachments, and if they got no one to censure or impeach, they got to move on to something else. This is just how bad it is this congressional session. And I think people like Jamie Raskin are doing a great job because he knows more about constitutional law than every member on the Republican side probably put together. But they have the ability, being in the majority, to do these hearings, and I think we just need to continue to call them out.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? First they had a Chinese spy, then they had a Russian spy, and now they've got a guy who's serving a 14-year federal prison sentence for fraud. It's incredible.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of like Trump family members at that point.
There you go. There you go. Ronald in Gary, Indiana, you're on with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. Thank you very much. I got 3 questions. They're short. So one of them is, can Congress, Trump, get screwed around with presidential pardons? Can Congress limit the presidential pardons that the president can make, limit the number of pardons a president can make?
I don't believe without major changes, I don't think we can just do it as a legislative matter. No.
Yeah, because it's in the Constitution.
Oh, okay. Well, Democratic, we're lousy at it. Can the Democrats hire a PR firm to handle that for them?
I don't know what you mean by we're lousy about it. If it's in the Constitution, that's the Constitution. So I'm not sure. If
he was talking about messaging.
Oh, I gotcha. And of course, I guess would be the answer to the next one. There's lots that can be done. The problem is, and Tom and I have had this conversation for years, you can only take the media sometimes so far. There's a lot of press conferences and messaging around things, but if it doesn't sell detergent in the 8 minutes you have in a half-hour newscast, for the 22 minutes they put out there, they just don't pick it up. And often that's the challenge. You can have a PR firm do it. It doesn't change a single thing. Often we have just a difficulty with, 24/7 media getting it first not right, and the limited time you have to get some of those messages across on a news program because they're selling detergent as a profit as their primary focus.
David in North Miami Beach, Florida. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hey, all. Greetings, Congressman. I'm glad our friends across the aisle have rediscovered the value of AM radio. Maybe we can cut a deal with them that would make it easier for liberal talk to return to blue zones like Fort Lauderdale, where Tom was reintroduced back in 2008. Because we're being shut out, and especially the older people are forgetting why they used to vote for, nice people in the 90s and such.
Yeah, no, I've been supportive of, these efforts as well. That's the free radio for folks that are out there for many people. And the more, people can. I agree. We need more blue stations. There have been a couple, at least one big national effort years back that tried to do it as a broad network. In Wisconsin right now, Tom, there's a network doing that. There's, I think, about 21 stations, and they're getting information out there. And I think radio is such an important medium that can reach a lot of people, including people like me. I mean, I live 35 minutes from Madison, the biggest city in my district, but when I'm driving each way, I'm listening to the radio, often our progressive radio station, and because of that, you're getting that information out to people, and we would be very wise to make sure that we're taking advantage of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Joe in Portland, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, thanks so much. Is my sound quality okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see. So a few things, and take these in
Please pick one.
any
What's
order
your question,
you
Joe?
Yeah. So first, how long do you think Project 2025 has really been going on? And Tom, I know your article, Why Oligarchs Don't Just Want to Be Rich But Kill Democracy Too, dating back to the 60s. And then do you think that the news networks in the 2016 election deliberately tried to lull Democrats voters into a false sense of security by saying, oh, Trump will never win, he's such a clown? And then third, have you seen the WikiLeaks of the CIA, the top secret thing from the Department of State in 2014?
Yeah, I'm just going to stop it right there. It's really unfair to people who are in line to say, I have 3 questions. And, it's just one. So, Congressman, pick a question from Joe and feel free to answer.
Honestly, it's hard to remember 3 questions, too. I try to take notes sometimes. I can't remember one aspect of it because I was trying to keep track of it.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just move on. Lou in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. I read something, and I don't know if it's accurate, regarding aid for Ukraine and Speaker Johnson's refusal to bring the bill to the floor. I read that there are 24 Democrats, the congressman being one of them, that are deflecting and won't vote for the bill to have an up and down vote.
Is this the discharge petition?
That.
Yeah, so there's a couple discharge petitions, one led by a more moderate Republican, but it does not have any humanitarian aid, and it has a couple other things that just are complete non-starters. So I think there's maybe 10 or 12 or so Republicans, maybe 15 on that one. There's one to bring up the exact Senate bill that would fully fund Ukraine funding, which I completely support, would not fully fund, but at least at $9.2 billion humanitarian aid for the entire planet. I support even more than that, but I support 9.2. But it also has the defense funding for Israel, which a number of us, with Benjamin Netanyahu's extremely poor use of our weapons and has really been doing a collective punishment of Palestinians in Gaza, are concerned. We want at minimum conditions. Part of what some of us are doing is, we're not signing it right now while we talk to the White House about what they're going to do about the funding to Israel. I mean, even the White House has said Benjamin Netanyahu does not share U.S. interest. We want a 2-state solution. He does not. We don't want weapons used in the way that he's used them, which is killing women and children. Over 10,000 of 31,000 people overall in Gaza. So that's part of what's going on. Even with all the Democrats signing, you need Republicans to sign. So there's really no time urgency until a single Republican signs it. But in the meantime, we're having a conversation trying to move the White House to help us talk about having conditions on aid to Israel, because we don't just want them used killing innocent people in Palestine like Benjamin Netanyahu, unfortunately, has been doing.
So, and the other bottom line of that is that not one single Republican has signed that discharge petition. So even if all the Democrats signed it, it's still dead in the water.
Exactly. And I don't think there is a Democrat, and I don't want to speak for all Democrats, but I don't think there is a Democrat I know of that wouldn't vote for Ukraine funding if we get a chance to get it up. The question is, we have real problems with not having conditions on the Israeli funding.
Yeah, got it. Steve in New Boston, Michigan, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good day, gentlemen. Do you both know, and your listening audience know the saying that that's like the pot calling the kettle black? I'm asking this because I'm watching Donald Trump at one of his campaign rallies, and he's talking about the problems at the southern border, and he's saying how bad these people are that are coming across the border into our country, that these people are murderers, these people are drug smugglers. And then he emphasizes some of these people are rapists. Uh-oh. Fact check me, gentlemen, if I'm wrong, but isn't Donald Trump himself a convicted rapist? And if yes, let's start spending some Democratic ad money to start emphasizing that fact.
Yeah, I actually have seen a little bit of that. I think the most, I explained this to someone when last week when I was going around the district and someone raised the issue of the crimes. And I said, look, it defies common sense what he's saying. Yes, whenever you have that amount of people, you're going to have someone who's got some history that you can't check and find no matter how much you tried to do the searching. However, in general, you have lower crime rates among many folks that are coming here to become citizens because the only thing they really want is to become a citizen, and that will absolutely ensure they won't if they commit a crime. So in many ways, what he's saying is so hyperbolic and inaccurate, but it sounds good for people who, don't watch the news or watch news like Fox or Newsmax, and that's our problem.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. The former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, currently representing the 3rd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House. Pocan.house.gov is his website. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's Middays with Mark here on Thursday edition on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Joyce in Bakersfield, California. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much. And I thank you, Representative Pocan, for what you do. This question is for us poor senior citizens who are house poor. I was wondering, if the Democrats could introduce legislation to enable us to claim our mortgage interest rates on our taxes. That way, each year. That way we would be able to make house repairs and we won't have to be bothered about getting a reverse mortgage, which puts money into the pockets of the banks again. And we could maybe leave our homes to our kids. And we won't be living in a rundown house, but we could, live with dignity, those of us who are on fixed incomes. That's my question.
Yeah, I hear you, Joyce. Thank you for that. And, I think housing actually is one of the biggest issues that we're having affordability issues on right now. I hear it from every member across districts. This is something, it's a major part of the Progressive Caucus platform that we're kind of moving on in the next year priorities. This is something I know the Biden administration is certainly talking about and understands as a problem is affordability in general with housing. And I just had people in my office today having this very conversation. So you're right. I mean, I think there's a number of things we need to do. One, more affordable housing. Two, what can we do for folks, like you said, who have their money invested in their single biggest investment in their life, but you need capital for other reasons. There are some issues around deductibility that are out there. Largely, though, the one that I think is before Congress is the SALT deduction, the state and local tax deduction that for people who have a little bigger homes, they can't deduct after a certain amount of time, $10,000, I believe it is, that deduction. But that doesn't so much address affordability, I think, in the way Joyce is bringing up. But much more needs to happen. And unfortunately, this is probably the one biggest hangover left coming out of COVID with increased costs has been housing. And it's one of the trickier to actually, I think, turn that ship around. We all need to be talking about this much more and having some more ideas.
Dave in Hale, Michigan. You're on the air with Representative Pocan. Just a minute to a break, Dave.
Okay, thanks. I'll make it quick. Mr. Pocan, international, is there a way to break down international economics with our health care system in order to make everything more economic, or is it we just hanging on to our patent system and stuff like that and raising our costs and everything? But that's my question. I'll make it short. Thanks,
Dave.
Yeah, Dave, I hear you. I mean, there's no question. We pay more for prescription drugs, for example, than any other country that I know of. Our healthcare costs, the percent that goes to overhead and profit and other administrative expenses, is higher than most every country. We're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have universal healthcare. There's much that we should use in comparison to other countries to try to get people to maybe wake up and realize that too much money that should be going towards helping people is going towards corporate profits. And that's across the board, from insurance to prescription drugs and more.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in 60 seconds. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Help support Progressive Radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it. You know, one of the grand questions that political scientists have been scratching their heads over for years in America is, why do right-wing billionaires fund anti-black history movements? Why are they pouring money into these people? Why are they funding anti-trans movements? I mean, what does this have to do with being a billionaire? Well, it turns out it has a lot to do with it, and here's why. Almost 30 million Americans lack health insurance. 37 million of us live in dire poverty. 1 in 5 of us are illiterate. 1/4 of Americans suffer from a diagnosable mental illness and can't get treatment. 316 people are shot every day in America. 44% of us carry student debt. And the billionaires don't want to pay income taxes to deal with any of these problems of society. That's the real issue. If they can get us fighting with each other over black history or over trans people or kids, they win. Then we're not talking about taxing them, raising their taxes to where they should be. There's a whole rant about this over at hartmanreport.com that you can read and see all the stats and all the hot links. Check it out. 9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. Excuse me. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. Social Security, in terms of making it, solvent. I mean, when Social Security was developed, it was based as an insurance policy that would, you would pay in for your retirement benefit, and that worked pretty well until 1972. When they tacked on this SSI, which is now costing us $60 billion a year. This has nothing to do with retirement. Can't we get legislation that would separate these out again, have our payroll taxes just go to our retirement, which would help keep it solvent for decades, and then have the SSI paid for, through the general budget funds like a lot of the other, social welfare programs are? I think that would work without having to raise any, rates.
Yeah, Tom, first of all, I think we might have a problem because look at us right now. We can't even do the budgets, and you can't put that at risk, I think. So I'm not sure that's the answer. The answer, I believe, is quite easy. We quit having you pay into the Social Security fund at right now. I think it's around 160 to 170,000, and it appreciates just a little bit every year. You don't pay another dime in. It's like a reverse tax as opposed to a progressive. It's a regressive tax, right? And the president in his new budget proposal suggested people who make more than 400,000 should start paying back into Social Security, and that would extend the program 25 years right there. Just doing that, you don't have to make a single change to the program other than wealthy people continue to pay at the same rate that everyone else pays up to 160,000. The only change I would say is, we're making a donut hole because the president said no one under 400,000 would pay additional taxes. I would just say that you pay into the fund no matter what your income is, like any other tax, and that would extend, I think, 75 years into the future. There are easier solutions, and then I also would like to see us change how we pay it out and give a little greater benefit increase based on the CPI-E, not the Consumer Price Index, but one that affects older Americans, more money on medications, less money on gasoline, and then that would still be very doable and have a long, long life to the program. But just make everyone pay in every penny they owe and don't cap it at $160,000. You don't pay another dime into the program. That's a regressive tax.
Jane in Jackson, Georgia, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Representative Pocan, I'm from Georgia. I'm not from Georgia, but I live in Georgia now. When I first moved here, I watched Governor Kemp actually steal the election from Stacey Abrams, and now if they have this ridiculous law that somebody can call your name out and you can be thrown off the Georgia rolls. And so that leaves the Democrats out here sort of like afraid to even say or discuss things around anyone because we're afraid we're going to be thrown off the rolls. And my representative, by the way, is one of the dudes that was in the insurrection. I mean, it's like I am so wanting to know what to do because I've been trying to call the Democratic hotline and everything. I always get a busy signal. They don't want to, they don't want to answer anything. And as far as going to where I vote, it's scary. I mean, I am a Democrat in a very red district, and is there anything you know of that is going to be done about this? Is there anything that can be done about the Republicans just calling people out, just taking them off the roll just because they are a Democrat and they see you as, this thing? And we live in this.
Got it. Jane, Greg
place.
Palast, in fact, just made a movie about that. We had him on the program. Congressman?
Yeah, two things. One, there are a number of organizations around the country that make legal challenges based on some of these. So if your rights are violated by some of the laws, at least you have some recourse there. But I think the second point is more important. You make the biggest case why on November, it's not just about the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives that's on the ballot. It's state legislatures and governorships and local government, county level offices that all matter, because that's where a lot of these laws that are making it harder for people to be able to vote are coming out of, and you're playing whack-a-mole to get them. So holistically, we need to pay attention to elections on the ballot, especially and sometimes in our local level and our state level, because that's where you're seeing those changes being proposed and introduced, and that's the best place to fight back.
Congressman, we just have 30 seconds left. Where should we be focusing our activism in the coming weeks, and what do you expect?
This happens to be a period of time where I'm not sure what the Senate schedule is, but it's probably similar. The next 2 weeks, we're in district over the Easter holiday, and many of us are doing town halls because you're home. It's a great opportunity to be able to face-to-face have a conversation, talk about the issues that are important to you. So reach out to your member of the House or Senate and ask where their town halls are in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully they're having some, and participate.
There you go. Congressman, thanks so much for dropping by.
Absolutely. Thank you as always.
My pleasure. Up next, let's see, Phil Ittner, live from Kyiv, Ukraine, will be with us. He can give us an update on what happened there overnight. It sounds pretty grim. And more of the news of the day, how Republicans are causing missing Americans. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give $20, it becomes $40. If you give $100, it becomes $200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States. because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President. There you go. President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV. Outlet that would listen to me. The book is by Ryan Hampton. And it's about the Purdue Pharma Bank.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our Thursday program. Phil Ittner's on the line with us, the veteran war correspondent based out of Kyiv, Ukraine. You can find his video blog over on YouTube. Just plug in his name, Philip Ittner. Ittner Philip, his name backwards is his Twitter handle. Phil, welcome back to the program. I understand you guys got hit pretty hard last night by the Russians there in Kyiv.
We did. Yeah. Truth to be told, I actually slept through it, which I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing, that it's become the kind of white noise in the back of our lives here in Kiev. Yeah, 31 missiles apparently. Air defense saying that they had knocked down all 31 of them. But nevertheless, when, debris, as we've seen so much in this war, falls on a city, it still causes massive damage. Last I saw, it was 21 injured. I hadn't seen any deaths, but, nevertheless, it was an intense attack, even though I myself slept through it.
Wow, that's remarkable. How is the war going? What's your sense of how things are?
It's not good. It's not good in the sense that more could be done right now if the United States and Congress released the funds and the supply chain of artillery rounds that are desperately needed here. But it is not so bad. It is not catastrophic, because this country still remains resolved to fight against Russian aggression. They don't want to return to being a colony of Moscow. I don't know why that's so hard for so many to understand, but it is something that they are determined to continue to do with or without our support. So we are just witnessing the death of more Ukrainians that don't have to die because of our own dysfunction and inability to follow through on the promises we made to this country. The country will not fall to the Russians. The Russians do not have the capacity to take anything over a 10, 20, 30,000 population city, most of which are evacuated before the fighting comes to them. So really all the Russians are inhabiting and conquering is a bunch of rubble. But they cannot take a city like Kramatorsk or Dnipro or Zaporizhia, or certainly not something like Odessa or Kharkiv. It's too. The decision has been made, and the strength of the Ukrainian people is still such that they would cost Russia not only in lives, but just in expenditure to try and take these towns. It ain't going to happen. So we need to, but the question is, can this conflict come to a resolution where primarily Ukraine feels itself well enough defended in the borders that were agreed upon in 1991, how do they take that back? Well, they only take that back with U.S. support, and that's what needs to be done to get a resolution to this conflict that will be sustainable.
Right. Because
short of that, the Russians will just keep coming back. If they win a little bit of territory, if they take more territory and absorb more territory as the Russian empire that Putin wants to restore, they will just keep coming for more. So they have to be pushed back to 91, or it'll just be more appetite.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they did at Grozny or Georgia. It's just
throughout their entire history.
Yeah, it's nuts. You mentioned Zaporizhia. The last time we talked, there was concern that nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, has had either. I guess there were 9 redundant power lines coming in that could keep it from melting down, and 8 of them have been destroyed by the Russians. What's the latest on that nuclear power plant?
Well, I mean, the latest headline that we have heard out of there, and obviously this is an ongoing thing that happens on the daily, but the biggest news that we had gotten out of there recently, and I want to say it's within about the last 10 days or so, was that there were no more Ukrainian scientists or engineers working at the plant, that they had all been replaced now by Russians. Because many of the Ukrainians refuse to come to work anymore for a variety of reasons. That is of deep concern, obviously, because you want the guys that have worked their entire professional lives at that particular site, conducting the site, caring for the site. But they have apparently all left. And now that was the announcement about 10 days ago or so. This is an ongoing issue. That the UN inspection teams are there on a regular basis. Close eyes are kept on this, and this is not to dissuade concern over what's happening it's the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and it is in the middle of a war zone. Obviously, there's deep concern for it, but it's a constant concern.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I also saw a report yesterday that Ukraine has taken out something like 7 or 8% of Russia's refining capacity, and that just day before yesterday, Ukrainian drones blew up a Russian bomber base. How effective are the Ukrainians getting now at reaching into Russia? Something that pretty much wasn't even happening during the first year.
Yeah, well, they've extended their length of where these drones can actually go, and they are being very calculated especially when it comes to the oil industry, refineries and factories and what have you. These assets that are in Russia, there is a commonality in the coolant system in these various energy plants and sites. And so what the Ukrainians have done is specifically targeted those, and this is, again, something to keep in mind about the sheer distance these drones are flying to be this precise is that they go out the coolant systems, and by doing that, they are affecting a strain on the entire system as a whole by weakening this one single, or putting stress on this one single aspect, which is shared throughout the industrial sector there in Russia. These coolant plants, which is, again, an indication of how smart Ukrainian intelligence has been, and military intelligence has been, in that they know exactly what they're hitting, how they're hitting it, and in such a way that it breaks that, the weakest link in the chain, and then the entire industry is affected as a result. So, and then as far as Ingalls, you're referring there to the Air Force Base. Those are strategic bombers that launch cruise missiles. They have the capacity to bomb from high elevation, and they were apparently out on the tarmac, and a good deal of them were significantly damaged. So again, Ukraine needs help clearly on the battlefield, on the front lines. It has to be, if we hold true to our promises, it has to be reinforced, and that's why there's this bill that needs to be on the floor of the Congress. But make no doubt about it, the Ukrainians have a lot more fight in them against the Russians.
Yeah.
They're not just sitting around idle, and they won't be, with or without our support. The only tragedy is if we withdraw our support, it just means more Ukrainian dead, because this is existential for them.
Right.
They are looking at generations to come in the future,
and not just
thinking about what kind of world they want to be.
Yeah, and not just dead. Yesterday, I believe, maybe it was the day before, 20 some odd Republicans voted against a resolution, basically a non-binding resolution, condemning Russia for stealing over 100,000 Ukrainian children, transporting them to Russia, and selling them into God only knows what. I read an article recently suggesting that one of the largest suppliers of child pornography in the world is Russia right now. And I'm wondering how many of these Ukrainian children have been dumped into that industry. What is going on?
I had not heard that stat, Tom, and that's very, very disturbing, because we do know that children were targeted by Russian forces as they came into Ukrainian-held towns, and not held towns, but Ukrainian towns. They'd come into Ukrainian territory. They would conquer it by force of arms. And one of the first things that they would do is try to find where their children were. We know this from, I've spoken personally to people who attest to this. And it's widely, reported by a variety of outlets. It's not just my anecdotal evidence. And it's deeply disturbing, the fact that they were taking children on purpose. And this was a thought out, calculated targeting of children to take to Russia for a variety of reasons. And now they themselves will proudly proclaim that they are doing this because they say that Ukraine is filled with Nazis and they need to deprogram these Ukrainians into, dismissing their Ukrainian identity and accepting a Slavic identity with a Russia, Moscow, really, as the dominant determinant of what it means to be Slavic. But you can't be Ukrainian Slavic. You have to be what we proclaim to be Slavic. And this is, we hear stories, and we have documentation of children being forced to, sing the Russian national anthem, only them, none of the rest of the class, thereby, isolating and targeting these children, abusing them, drawing attention to them in classes, to exacerbate this holy divide that Russia has with Ukraine. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
What they've done. Yeah. And it's a crime. It's genocide, and it's ethnic cleansing. And it's very pure definition in the UN Charter. And that's why, Putin and his Minister for Children's Affairs are under indictment in the International Court of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, in The Hague, and rightfully so. Tom, if you give me the time, you get me revved up. This is an issue which is very dear to my heart. It is a crime what they're doing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And very wrong.
Yeah, we can dig into it more next week, Phil. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Anytime.
Great talking with you.
Anytime.
We'll be right back. And welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Cliff in Santa Clarita. Hey, Cliff, what's on your mind today?
Tom, always an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. What's up?
I'm not a religious guy. I'm not a God guy. If you had to label me, I reckon I'm an atheist. But I feel that I'm a spiritual being, just not attached to any religious dogma. But I do believe that being born and getting to live a life is truly a gift. And people can choose how to live their lives. But when I see people living their lives filled with hate and ignorance, displaying ignorance in their actions and behaviors, never getting to know a person, but hating them solely on the color of their skin, it seems like a waste of life. Nazis marching in public, white nationalists, KKK, this whole thing called racism, it's just so truly disgusting. It's such a low tone level for a person to go to. I don't know what else to express, but it almost makes me sick to my stomach. And ignorance like this really shouldn't be tolerated in a civil society. And guess what? We all have the same red blood flowing through our veins.
Yeah, Louise and I were.
I just wanted to make that statement, Tom.
Well, that's an excellent point, Cliff. Last night, Louise and I were watching TV, and they were talking about how I believe it's Alabama, it might have been Mississippi. One of the Confederate states just passed a law against quote DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what this means is that in the public schools in that state, they can't teach about the civil rights movement of the 1960s, for example. And Louise was telling me how when she went to school in East Lansing High School, and this was before I knew her, but when she was in high school, they were required in 10th or 11th grade to take a Black Studies course, a Black History course. And, she had been raised in an all-white neighborhood and didn't know any Black people and didn't know anything about Black history. And she was utterly shocked by it. I mean, it changed her life. I'm telling you, probably, a couple hundred times in the 50-plus years we've been married, she has brought up, sometimes out of nowhere, things that she learned in that Black history class and what an impact it had on her. And now you've got these former Confederate states outlawing such instruction. And it's because they want to perpetuate this kind of racism that you're talking about, Cliff. They view it as an effective political weapon. They view it as something that's going to help them get votes from white supremacists. And they're quite happy to encourage white supremacy. And I find it just shocking.
I agree, Tom.
Yeah, and then
horrible.
And we need to be pushing back against these anti-DEI laws and the Stop Woke Act down in Florida, the Don't Say Gay law. I mean, these are all efforts to try to raise a generation of kids as bigoted as their grandparents, and in some cases as their parents. And I just think it's a crime against America. It's a crime against humanity, and that the Republican Party thinks that this is the way to win elections is beyond disgusting. Cliff, thank you. That was so eloquently said. Thank you very much. 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, fair and only slightly unbalanced. I'll be right back with you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. "24 minutes past the hour, and just to get back to the news of the day, this is absolutely fascinating. Letitia James, just in the last few hours apparently, or at least the story just broke in the last few hours, she might have done this yesterday, has formally registered her lawsuit against Donald Trump, which is in whatever county Manhattan is in, with Westchester County. Westchester County is where Donald Trump has two of his largest and most high-value properties. One, the Westchester National Golf Course, the Trump National Golf Course Westchester, and the second, this massive estate, Seven Springs. It's a 212-acre estate with this giant kind of castle-like house on it. It's kind of like the house, the summer house, or out in the forest house, or whatever it was in Secession. If you saw that program, it's just this massive place. And this is the first step to seizing a property. So she already has the case in whatever county New York City is in, or Manhattan is in, and now she's also filing this in Westchester County. The thing to watch for now is if she reaches out to Florida to try to what's called domesticate. We had an attorney call into the program yesterday and describe how this works, and then I heard last night on one of the TV networks, another attorney basically saying the same thing. So interesting stuff, very interesting times. So also, now that's the Letitia James case. Also, there was a filing on behalf of her rejecting a new claim from Donald Trump, saying that his paying the full $464 million by March 25th, the next Monday, is a, quote, practical impossibility. And so what Letitia James filed was, she said, defendant's argument that obtaining a full bond is purportedly impossible is based on the false premise that they must obtain a single bond from a single surety for the entire judgment amount of $464 million. In other words, hey, just take out a second mortgage on every single one of your properties with a different bank for each one. She goes on to say, defendants supply no documentary evidence that demonstrates precisely what real property they offered to sureties or what terms the properties was offered. In other words, Trump may just be lying when he says 30 companies have turned him down. To paraphrase Trump's team, this was Trump's lawyer. He said, the use of real estate as collateral for an appeal bond is hardly impossible as a general matter. I'm sorry, it wasn't Trump's lawyer. This was the lawyer for Letitia James, who is rebutting Trump's lawyer. So stay tuned. This is going to get real interesting sometime in the next 5 or 6 days.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And with that said, on this beautiful Thursday, I will pick up your calls on the other side of the break, so stay tuned. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive. which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes 20. If you give 20, it becomes 40. If you give 100, it becomes 200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States, because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President. There you go. As President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV. Between and Fox News, can the two coexist? When Fox News runs chyrons saying that essentially Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator who's throwing Trump in jail because he's his political opponent. There's a whole rant about this and an in-depth analysis of what can we do with regard to repairing our media here in the United States over at HartmannReport.com. I think you'll find it interesting. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. By the way, I just Googled this. I just looked it up. Russia is the second largest producer of child pornography in the world and has kidnapped over 100,000 children from Ukraine, taken them away from their families and their parents, and trafficked them into Russia for God only knows what. Russian officials have claimed they're merely saving the children. The resolution was in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. It passed the committee unanimously with a 44-0 vote back in November, a resolution that, quote, holds the Russian government responsible for the wrongful and illegal kidnapping of children from Ukraine and states that doing so amounts to genocide. So this went to the floor of the House, and the following Republicans voted against a resolution condemning Russia for stealing Ukrainian children and trafficking them into Russia. Andy Biggs of Arizona, Republican. Eric Burleson of Missouri, a Republican. Warren Davidson of Ohio, a Republican. And all these Republicans are essentially voting in favor of children being kidnapped and trafficked into child porn in Russia. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Clay Higgins, Republican of Louisiana. Thomas Massey, Republican of Kentucky. Matt Rosendale, Republican of Montana. Chip Roy, Republican of Texas. And Tom Tiffany, Republican of Wisconsin. If any of these people represent you, you may want to give them a shout at 202-224-3121 and let them know what you think about their vote to say, oh yeah, it's just fine with us if Russia steals children and traffics them into child porn or God only knows what. Anyhow, picking up your calls here, Rachel in Bloomington, Minnesota. Hey, Rachel, thanks for listening to KTNF. What's up?
Hey, what you just said is what I was calling about. I did not know that information. I've supported the war in Ukraine since the beginning, but now that I heard what you said, that's definitely going to fuel my nightmares tonight. And I'm just wondering, why we can't get that on news every hour, or why that's not on billboards. The people you mentioned, thankfully, do not represent me, but I'm wondering, is there something else I can do? Because that's the most terrific news I've heard today.
Well, I think calling the people who do represent you would be a good start. Congress will act when they have a sense of a sufficient level of outrage from the American public. And that number, 202-224-3121, gets you to the congressional switchboard, and you can, ask for either of your two senators or your member of the House. And if you're not sure who they are, you just tell them your zip code, and they'll tell you who it is.
Did you say, though, there's already an investigation or something at The Hague or something?
Yeah, the Russia has been charged, Putin specifically, and the woman who is in charge of this program for stealing these children. And by the way, she, quote, adopted 2 or 3 of these Ukrainian children into her own family. The 2 of them have been charged with this crime at the International Criminal Court in The Hague of stealing children from Ukraine. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but don't tell the Republicans in the House about that. They don't want to hear about it. Rachel, thank you for the call. Bob in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Love to you. I just want to say that.
Thank
love
you, Bob.
to you.
Back at you.
Thanks. I need it.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, we do.
Love and blessings.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to get to my point in a minute, but do you remember the story Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
I've heard that phrase ever since I was a little kid. I have no idea where it came from.
It was a story about a flying car, but there was a character in the story, the child catcher. And he went down with his cage, scooping up.
Yeah, well, that's Putin right now.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Russian phenomenon you're discussing and so forth and so on. But anyway, I just want to put in my 2 bits. I won't necessarily talk about what you think I might want to talk about because it's so obvious and there's so many ways to learn about it. Jack Herrera's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, is a good way to learn about how all those dots are connected. So I won't mention that. But what I'll say is these people don't represent us. People in Congress, some of them think they do, and that's why they're there. And God bless them, and I'll keep voting for them as long as they want to do that. But we'd like to do other things with or without their blessings.
Yeah.
And we'd like support from the American people and the industries that do exist as corporations to get behind what it really means to be sustainable. And that's I just think
that'd be a good start. Did you see, Bob, that Joe Biden just put forward, I believe it was an executive order, or maybe just the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, but basically saying that tightening up the standards, the tailpipe emission standards, in a way that would reduce the number of gasoline-powered cars and increase the number of electric cars by about by 10 years from now. I mean, this is not an immediate thing. It's not going to take effect for a couple of years. And the fossil fuel industry announced yesterday that they're going to drop 7 figures, more than $10 million, into a national advertising campaign condemning Biden for pushing electric vehicles.
That's crazy. And I heard it. Yeah, that's good in the large picture. What you do to get around town in the meantime, with or without the blessing of the large conglomerates, is really what I've got in mind.
Yeah.
See people on their little scooters and things, and they get in the way and cause problems. So we need the larger picture. But what we really need is we need a law enforcement community that will go after the fascists and protect the people who are trying to protect the environment and human rights.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. And a lot of fascists get drawn into law enforcement. But Bob, thank you. Your points were all well made. Jason in 9 Mile Falls, Washington. Hey, Jason, what's up?
Hi, good morning, Tom. Listen, I'm a 100% disabled veteran, so I really focus on those types of issues. And I was looking through the new Republican Study Committee's
they want to raise the Social Security eligibility age and cut benefits.
Right. So if you're 54 years old, you got to fall into that. I am 55 right now. So, but it would affect my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But in dealing with Veterans Affairs, they want to do some changes in that. It says right here, the RSC budget would also modernize the VA's rating schedule for disability compensation to reflect changes in medical technology and in the labor market over the last several decades, which that, can I say my congresswoman's name?
Sure.
Unfortunately, Kathy McMorris Rogers is mine, and I have written over 30 commentaries that have been published in local paper railing against her. And she knows me, her office does. And I called them today because I want to know, I want to see this new rating schedule. I
guarantee it's going to be a cut in veterans benefits. I mean, the Republicans are always pushing cuts in veterans benefits. That's been their thing since the 80s.
And I want to know, okay, you're going to come out with this. Is my 100% going to be reduced to 60?
I think there's probably a good chance of it.
I know. And I'm planning on writing another op-ed about this, and I can't wait to probably not hear back from her office, but I'm going to keep calling.
Well, you know what it's all about, Jason, is that, they just desperately want to cut government spending so that there's no justification for raising taxes on the billionaires who own the GOP.
So that the other thing they want to do is, if you're receiving a disability pension from the VA, they want to take away your Social Security.
Yep.
And I want all disabled veterans that are listening to your show to know about this. If they want, I would encourage them to look up this study committee and call your congressperson and let them know.
Yeah.
Get on them over it.
The Republic. I mean, remember when Joe Biden said, "I know there's some of you who want to cut Social Security," and they all said, "No, no, 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 no," and he was like, "Oh, isn't that great?" That was a year ago. 1 year passes, and now here come the Republicans with their budget. Yep, let's cut Social Security. Amazing. Jason, thank you for the call, and keep up the great work.
You're welcome, Tom.
Yep, good talking to you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
45 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back, Jessica in Chicago. Hey, Jessica, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm so happy you took a well-deserved break with your family in Costa Rica.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a wonderful vacation.
Yeah, you deserve it. And I'm calling because the Trump, the idiot, he's a drama king, such a drama king, and he sent me a text, which is so unusual. It said, from Trump, and then all capitals, hands off Trump Tower, and then all capitals, radical Democrats want to seize my property.
I got that text message too.
I thought you would probably have, but I've only given to Democrats, Bernie, etc., so I'm not certain how that happened. But he's just going to take all the money he can for as long as he can from his followers until Monday. And I'm not exactly believing that he doesn't have money, because if you ask me, Kushner, his son-in-law, he wants back in the White House. How can he not want to help out his father-in-law?
Right, and he's sitting on $2 billion. He could just write a check.
Exactly.
And call it an investment.
Steve Mnuchin could help, too. He got $2 billion.
Yeah, he got $1 billion. Mnuchin.
Oh.
Yeah, the foreclosure king, the guy who threw 30,000 Californians out of their homes in 2008. Yep.
Yeah, I just think he's a drama king to get everyone's money. But I am really proud of Letitia James, and I'm really hoping she gets Mister, because wouldn't that be great, Tom? They could later have the FBI search that place top to bottom and if she does get that. Actually, right now, the FBI ought to be sure that nobody's carrying out boxes of documents. They ought to get on that, That drives me crazy.
Yeah, in Bedminster. Yeah, it's now we've got, actual testimony, and the FBI still hasn't checked it out. Jessica, thank you. Thank you very much for the call. It's always nice to hear from you. Bobby in La Puente, California. Hey, Bobby, what's up?
Yeah, first I got to apologize. Joe Madison, you lost a good friend, and it was a shock to me.
Yeah,
I understand what you're going through, so sorry for that, Tom. Anyway, your report on the children, used as pawns for pornography. I was talking to Mark. It just lit the top of my head wanted to blow up. The reason why I'm a product of physical, emotional, psychological abuse, along with my brothers. So when this happens to children, what does it say in that Bible? Those that you mentioned, Green and these Republicans, read your Bible. To harm a child, I believe, tie a rope and throw yourself into the deepest part of a lake or an ocean.
Correct.
That's what I
rope
believe.
around a stone, yep.
Because look what's happening. Come on, people, these Republicans. Child pornography? What is wrong with them?
Yeah.
What is wrong with them? I wish I had the power. And what I would have them do, drink the medicine, have some compassion, empathy. Don't these people have a soul? At my age, Tom, I'm still dealing with my effects of my past, and it's okay. And these poor children, let's pray for them.
Yep.
Keep up the support for Ukraine. Wake up, people.
Well said, Bobby. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for the call. Nice to hear from you. Thank you, Bobby, and back at you. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So back in 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt became president, we were in the depths of the Great Depression. He raised the top income tax rate on billionaires from 25% to 90%. The ultra-rich were screaming, and here's what he had to say.
A number of my friends who belong in the very high upper bracket have suggested to me on several occasions of late that if I am reelected president, they will have to move to some other nation because of high taxes here. Now, I will miss them very much.
He just took it right to them, right? Now, what came out of that was the world's largest and fastest growing and first major middle class. We can do this again. We just have to raise taxes on rich people. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Craig in Freeport, Illinois. Hey, Craig, what's on your mind today?
Mr. Hartmann, it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, all these congressmen who voted against the resolution to condemn the kidnapping of children in Russia, I was wondering
in Ukraine. By Russia, yeah.
Yeah, by Russia from Ukraine. I was wondering if maybe they are afraid that would open their mega bro up to the criminal court scrutiny.
Putin and the woman that is in charge of the Russian operation to steal children from Ukraine, and apparently they've stolen over 100,000 children out of Ukraine, have both been indicted in the criminal court at The Hague for that crime. But they'll never, there will not be a challenge, as it were.
No, I said that wrong. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if they were afraid it would open Donald Trump up to scrutiny from the criminal court.
Oh, how so?
For kidnapping all those children at the border.
Oh, at the southern border. Well, yeah, I mean, we may well have had, I mean, there's still 1,000 children that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller tore from their families who are still unaccounted for. 1,000 of them that we still can't find. And again, were they trafficked into child porn rings? Were they trafficked, were they sold? I mean, we just don't know because the Trump administration didn't keep records. They didn't want to know.
Yeah, they could have been trafficked.
Exactly. I'm guessing probably many of them were. I mean, why else would the Trump administration refuse to keep records? They were selling them to their Republican friends. People like Denny Hastert. I mean, not that he was buying those children, but look him up. You'll get his history on this issue. So, yeah, it's serious stuff. It really is, Craig.
But I was wondering if that might be why all these mega representatives voted against the resolution to condemn Russia for kidnapping those children from Ukraine.
They're just these are 9 Republicans who are just in love with Vladimir Putin. They want American democracy to end, and they want America to be a totalitarian state. I mean, it's just that simple. It's Andy Biggs, Eric Burleson, Warren Davidson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Clay Higgins, Thomas Massey, Matt Rosendale, Chip Roy, and Tom Tiffany. And may their names live in infamy. Craig, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Mike in Columbia, Missouri. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I got just a short statement, and actually, I want to thank you very much for having Joy Reid on this week. I really love her.
Yeah,
and,
wasn't she delightful? That was just a great interview, and that book is just amazing.
I watch her every evening. In fact, I watched the whole, starting with Ari Melber, up through Chris Hayes, and also David Tackman on Free Speech TV.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I appreciate those interviews. I really like them.
Oh, you're welcome.
Have a good day.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mike. Nice to hear from you. Doug in Portland. Hey, Doug, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Appreciate your show a lot, as always. And I have a thought I just want to run by you, which is that Republicans, it seems, and the right, they wrap themselves, it seems to me, in the Constitution as if it's sacred from on high, can't be touched. But my understanding, and you know better than I, is that it was kind of conceived, as a compromise between the North and the South, and it's better viewed and reasonably can be considered a working document that
Thomas Jefferson said when he was president, speaking of the Constitution, he said that the idea of not changing the Constitution, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you can easily find this quote, is essentially the same thing as requiring a man to wear the same coat that he wore as a child. In other words, you've outgrown it, right? You've grown beyond it. And so it needs to be changed. Right. He was very clear about that. He said, in fact, he proposed that the Constitution should be changed every 19 years, which is what he defined as one generation.
Right. So how come the left, how can we on the left, and how can our, politician allies on the left who want to see progressive change get that kind of messaging out into into our democracy and our public and our fellow citizens?
I think it's a geeky enough, erudite enough topic, Doug, that most Americans aren't even interested in, what the founders thought about updating the Constitution, and for that matter, debates in Congress. And also, because it takes 2/3 of the House and Senate and 3/4 of the states to amend the Constitution, what Republicans figured out is it's really, really hard to amend the Constitution, but it's really, really easy to have a federal court essentially rewrite the Constitution. And that's why they have spent so much of the last 40 years trying to pack the federal judiciary, which they have now succeeded in doing. And as a result of that, you're seeing, the end of Roe v. Wade and now states out, throwing millions and millions of Americans off the voting rolls, the voting purges. I mean, just all kinds of bizarre stuff that, in my mind, clearly violates the Constitution, but has all been, given a stamp, the good sealing, good housekeeping seal of approval by Republican members of Congress, by Republican judges. Doug, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's the top of the hour. We'll be right back with you on the other side. Russia is arresting people in the queer community right now. I got to tell you about that. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. If you're
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give $20, it becomes $40. If you give $100, it becomes $200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language. Bring students here. Let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States. because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President.
There you go. President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Wow. Letitia James, she's getting ready to grab him by the assets. It's getting wild. I just can't help myself. I just grab them by the assets. Yes. Jessica Valenti, jessica.substack.com. She's been on this program a number of times. She writes a Substack newsletter called Abortion Every Day. And she writes, this is from her yesterday, her Substack yesterday. She says, back in January, I wrote about how Republicans wanted women with life-threatening pregnancies to be forced into C-sections instead of having quicker, safer, and medically standard abortions. Now, think about that for a minute. This is totally weird. A woman who's got a dead fetus or a deformed fetus, needs to have an abortion. What the Republicans are saying is that woman, instead of having an abortion, which would leave her intact and capable of having, future pregnancies without complications and normal vaginal births, instead they want her to have a C-section to remove the fetus and, I don't know, call it a birth or something. So anyhow, she says, that's right, they wanted to force women whose lives were already endangered to have major abdominal surgery rather than a 10-minute procedure. And then she notes that when she wrote about this back in January, that a whole bunch of people responded to her going, come on, Republicans are not that stupid, they're not that crazy, they're not that evil, you're exaggerating. So she says, well, a new report out of Louisiana shows that's exactly what's happening. Usually I like to be right, but not this time. Yesterday, Lift Louisiana published a report about women being denied miscarriage treatment and care for ectopic pregnancies, delays in prenatal care, women being forced into major abdominal surgeries like C-sections. She says it's a nightmare, but it was the forced C-sections that took my breath away. I'm quoting from Jessica Valenti. She says the report details one case, for example, where a woman's water broke 20 weeks into her pregnancy, far too early for the fetus to survive. In order to preserve the appearance of not doing an abortion, her doctor performed a C-section. NPR notes this patient was not given a choice. She was forced into the surgery. This is a quote from a Louisiana ER doc who was quoted on NPR. Quote, what that means is that now this person has had a C-section, right? And that means that she's at a higher risk for any future pregnancies. She can no longer deliver vaginally. The appropriate thing to do, again, would have been a D&E without subjecting the patient to this unnecessary abdominal surgery. But my colleague didn't feel like she could do that while remaining in compliance with Louisiana law or appearing to remain in compliance with the law. Now, Louisiana's law says that any doctor who performs an abortion is looking at 15 years in prison. This report that Jessica Valenti is quoting cites a maternal fetal medicine specialist who writes, quote, our Attorney General, Jeff Landry, sent us all a letter saying, I will put you in jail if you break these rules. Literally, I am out to get you, so don't break these rules. So you do feel a little bit like there's a target on your back because you want to do what's right for the patient. And these aren't situations that happen infrequently. These aren't clinical scenarios that happen once a year. They happen all the time. Every time I'm on a call, I have a patient that's considered to potentially be in a life or death situation. End of quote. Back to Jessica Valenti. The report also deals patients denied abortions even though they had life-threatening cardiac conditions, and others who couldn't get treatment despite having cancer because they weren't, quote, going to die right away, end quote. This is the whole Republican thing about if you've got cancer and you're pregnant, you can't take chemotherapy because it'll cause the fetus to abort. So you're just gonna, you're gonna have to give birth and then die from cancer as the cancer progresses from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. She goes on to say, this, by the way, is what the anti-abortion groups want. Now, why would they want that? She describes it. She explains it. She says, they are desperate to divorce abortion from health care. Specifically, they want Americans to believe that abortion is never necessary to protect or save someone's life and health. By mandating that doctors give women C-sections or induce vaginal labor, they think they can make that talking point come true. The Charlotte Lozier Institute, for example, again, I'm quoting from Jessica Valenti, one of the nation's largest and best-funded anti-abortion groups, explicitly recommends that treatment for emergency abortions, quote, be done by labor induction or C-section. The group also says that C-sections are, quote, a more appropriate method of separation because it shows greater respect for the human dignity of the fetus, even if she is too young or sick to survive. Please note, there wasn't a word of mention about the dignity of the woman carrying that non-viable fetus. It's all about the dignity of a fetus that is going to die in utero and may well kill mom in the process. I find this just astonishing. And am just scratching my head over why isn't this being more widely discussed in America? Why isn't this in the news every day? I guess we've just gotten used to Republicans just being crazy. I mean, just, hating on women all the time. Meanwhile, in Russia, a couple of months ago, you'll recall, I reported on it when it happened. I believe it was in November. In fact, it was in November. Russia banned the so-called international LGBT movement. They passed a law saying it was a crime to be a member of basically the international gay movement. And now they're starting to lock people up. They're rounding them up. The Russian court on Wednesday ordered the arrest of a bar owner and its art director, accusing them of organizing an extremist organization under new legislation criminalizing the LGBTQ community. This was the first criminal case of its kind launched since Russia banned the so-called international LGBT movement in November. They will remain in custody until May 18th. That's when their trial begins. And they face up to 10 years in prison for being gay. These two men. And not even for having sex. I mean, they weren't accused of having gay sex or any kind of sex. They were simply accused of being gay. The tribunal earlier accused the two suspects of, quote, promoting non-traditional sexual relations among the visitors of the bar. In other words, they ran a gay bar. This is a quote from the court, the Russian court. The accused, people of non-traditional sexual orientation, acted in premeditation with a group of people who also support the views and activities of the International Public Association LGBT. So what Russia's doing with this right here is the exact same thing that the Fox News and right-wing hate radio have done with the anti-fascist movement. I mean, my dad was an anti-fascist. The day he graduated from high school, he signed up to join the army and go off and fight Nazis. Now, while he was in boot camp, the war ended, and so he ended up in the occupation forces in Japan for 2 years. But you know, he was clear. You know, he was an anti-fascist and proud of it. And Antifa means simply anti-fascist. There is no Antifa group in America. You can't, you know, call. You know, it used to be 411, but you know, you can't look up in the yellow pages or the white pages Antifa. There's no address. There's no president. There's no. You know, it's like, I guess I'm Antifa. I'm anti-fascist. So you know. So what Russia is doing is the same thing, but Fox News and Republicans pretend that there's this boogeyman out there, this group of people called Antifa, who are hell-bent on burning down American cities. Well, now the Russians are pretending that there's this international group called LGBT that is hell-bent on converting Russians into homosexuals or something like that. As I said, the court said the accused, people of non-traditional sexual orientation, acted in premeditation with a group of people who also support the views and activities of the International Public Association, known as LGBT. Right. This article in Agence France-Presse ends, the Kremlin has further ramped up conservative rhetoric since launching its military assault in Ukraine, casting the conflict as a battle against the West and its liberal values.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
In that, of course, they are joined by the Republican Party, which, you know, is now run by Trump, who is joined at the hip to Putin. And welcome back. Let's see here. Picking up your calls. Who's been on hold the longest? Kevin in Union, Oregon. Hey, Kevin, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how's it going today?
I'm well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. It's been nice out here on the east side. I just want to let you know, I mean, there's this program on Netflix. It's a Turning Point series called The Bomb in the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And I think your listeners and would really love it. It goes from the whole history from the beginning when the bomb was made all the way through up to Ukraine and current day. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed at how much I learned from this series. It's like they go through the whole deal with the fall of the Berlin Wall and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought, because I've always been taught that, that was because of Reagan. And actually, it had really nothing to do with Reagan. The reason the wall came down was because Russia messed up during the time when Gorbachev, I think, was in charge. And they messed up. He had promoted this new prime minister guy. And one day he was on TV, and I don't know if he was drunk or whatever, and he said, some reporter asked him about, can people go back and forth? We heard they're going to be able to. Yeah. He goes, you could do it. Yeah, it
was Boris Yeltsin.
Exactly, Boris Yeltsin, yeah.
And he was drunk.
So people started going to the border and to the wall, and the guards didn't know what to do. So finally they said, we'll just let them go. And that was the beginning of how the wall fell. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I was in Budapest that week with my best friend, Jerry Schneiderman, my friend who just died of COVID a couple of weeks ago. and and all these East Germans were coming into Hungary at the time. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing watching all this stuff. And then they showed these. It was at least 3 times or more where we came so close to nuclear war, that I had never heard of before. Like one time when they had a false thing on the radar, and we thought that they had shot missiles at us, and first it was 200, and they said, "Oh no, it's 2,000," and it came really close to us firing at them. And then it also happened the other way. Russia thought we were firing missiles at them.
Yeah, I've seen that. If I haven't seen that specific special, I've seen one that documents all those things. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, like I said, I think if anyone wants to see the history, this one's good. And like I said, it brings it all the way up through the invasion into Georgia and what Russia did there.
Yeah, and
what's
South
happening
Ossetia
right now in Ukraine.
Yep.
And it's just really enlightening.
Yeah, and South Ossetia as well. I mean, they went into both. We talked about those things a fair amount on this program when that happened. I think that was around, 2008, 9, 10, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think people will really love watching this if they get a chance. They say, if you have Netflix, go on and watch it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And one other thing before I go, a couple weeks ago, there was a guy talking about Trump and the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the site where you can go do that is called Antichrist45.org.
Okay.
From a guy named Brother Paul.
I'll have to check it out.
Everything in the Bible.
I'll have to check it out. Kevin, thank you very much for that. Antichrist45.org. Okay. I'm on my way. Stay tuned. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. So yesterday, this is just, crazy. Yesterday, James Comer was running his little dog and pony show in the House Oversight Committee. The guy that, sometimes referred to as Comer Pyle. He's not the brightest bulb in the tree. I mean, it's so obvious. And Jamie Raskin kind of went after them, not kind of, very much went after them. When they brought in Lev Parnas, and Lev Parnas said, we went over to Ukraine, and me and Rudy Giuliani, and we hooked up with the Russian intelligence service, and they fed us a bunch of lies about Biden, and we brought those lies back to the United States and promoted them because, hey, Trump and Russia are on the same side, essentially. I'm paraphrasing wildly. I played the clips for you yesterday from his testimony. Well, the committee, the House Oversight Committee, then tabled a motion to subpoena Jared Kushner. This is where it gets really interesting. They had this whole thing. When Lev Parnas came in, he was invited by the Democrats, but there was a Republican guy giving testimony. He was giving it from a federal prison. He's in jail for 14 years for fraud and financial crimes and things. So just exactly the kind of guy that Republicans just love. And so this was this Hunter Biden hearing. And so in the middle of the Hunter Biden hearing, one of the Democrats, it was Jamie Raskin. He says, Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I would move that the committee issue a subpoena to Jared Kushner to compel testimony related to the $2 billion collected from Saudi Arabia after his service within the White House. And somebody else seconded the motion. And so Jim Jordan then stands up and who's on the committee, stands up and says, I move to table the motion, which means kill it. And so Comer says the motion to table is not debatable. As many are in favor of, in other words, we will not have a debate about this. We're just going to have a vote. As many as are in favor of tabling say aye. And of course, all the Republicans said aye. And there's one or two more Republicans on the committee than there are Democrats, because the Republicans control the House of Representatives. And so the effort to to subpoena Jared Kushner to explain what he did. What did he give Saudi Arabia in exchange for $2 billion? What did he do for Saudi Arabia that got him such, eternal gratitude that over the objection of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund's management, they did not want to give that $2 billion to Jared Kushner. They said it's a bad deal. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's never run an investment vehicle in his life. He's just a low-rent slumlord from New York. And, I mean, literally, that was Jared Kushner before he hooked up with the Trump family. He was a slumlord. He ran a bunch of low-income housing that's made their profits with government subsidies. And, we're infested with rats and cockroaches and everything else. But Mohammed Bonesaw said, the guy who killed Jamal Khashoggi, he said, no, we're going to give him $2 billion. He's my buddy. Bizarre. It's just bizarre. All right, let's pick up your calls here. Dennis in Sarasota, Florida. Hey, Dennis, what's on your mind today?
Well, hi, Tom. A couple of things. The first is I wanted to give you a report from Florida Veterans for Common Sense on Jim Hightower's appearance at our annual Thomas Paine birthday party. It was amazing. He's a hell of a guy.
Oh, Jim Hightower is. Yeah, he really and truly is. He's an amazing man.
And he's cut from the same bolt as Tom Paine was.
Yeah. And he's funny. Tom Paine was never funny. Jim Hightower is funny, too.
Yeah, Jim's funny. He is funny. I give you that. Well, that was just a report from the front. And the next was a question. And it pertains to Trump's solicitation of donations to pay his legal bills and to help him post these bonds.
Right.
And it's been a real long time, I hate to say how long, since I had the income tax class. But it smells like he's soliciting income from donors. And dollars to donuts, he'll never report it as income tax. But, I didn't practice in the tax law area, so I'm wondering if anybody can help us. If Trump solicits donations to pay his personal legal fees and pay the bonds to allow his appeal to go forth without his properties being levied upon, is that income? And if he doesn't report it, can we throw him in jail?
For tax evasion.
I just don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. I mean, it's not Trump who's raising the money. It's a series of political action committees and the RNC that are raising the money, and Trump is splitting it up among them. And so the question, I guess, is are the PACs that are raising money and then spending that to defend Trump, are they defending Trump institutionally, as a former president or as a politician or as a member of a party, or are they defending Trump personally? And I would think, particularly with the E. Jean Carroll case, you could build a strong case that this was personal, not institutional, and therefore it should be considered income. But I don't know the tax law either, Dennis. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, perhaps one of the other brilliant listeners in your audience can call in and let us know.
Let's hope so. There are some very, very smart lawyers who listen to this program, so maybe we'll get an opinion.
CPAs, tax accountants, whatever.
There you go. I'll take anybody who knows what they're talking about. Dennis, thank you. Great question. And thanks for listening to WMNF. Thank you.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what's on your mind? I'll be back with your calls right after this break. Stay with us. Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give 20, it becomes 40. If you give 100, it becomes 200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. We're not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States, because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President. There you go. As President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year, so please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV. From international trade policy to immigration policy to housing, we've got all kinds of topics. The wars between Republicans and Democrats, the Republican efforts to induce fascism in the United States. A great selection of opinions will be found over at HartmannReport.com. When I was a little kid, my grandmother had a piano, and I loved to play it. I was incompetent, but I was figuring out all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of got away from it and, you know, went to school and things got busy and just lost track of it. Well, now there's this fascinating new study out of the University of Geneva, Switzerland, that is making me think maybe I should go back and learn the piano. What they found was that they took a group of 132 healthy older adults, retired, 62 to 78 years old. Half of them learned the piano, half of them took music classes without learning the piano. And what they found was that those who learned the piano actually had the strongest increase in their memory, in their mental competence, their mental faculties. Those who took the music classes also did well, but learning the piano was a huge step. So check it out. There's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Andy, hang on just a second. I just have to read this quote. It's attributed to Letitia James. I'm sure she didn't say it, but it's just gone viral. I just tweeted it. I'm automatically attracted to assets. I just start seizing them. It's like a magnet. Just seize. I don't even wait. When you're a state attorney general, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the airplane. You can do anything. Okay. Andy, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I was just listening to some polling data about their polling data when the Republicans went to the primaries, and that like 20%, 1 out of 5 of these of Republicans are rejecting Trump, which as a candidate, which makes me think there's some critical thinking going on of some kind in the Republican Party. And for Biden to seize on that would be very difficult, though, because for 3 years, I've been waking up every morning listening to him being bashed for being old, bashed for this and bashed for that, with no pushback from prominent Democrats anywhere. And so a lot of this animosity toward Biden, no matter what he does, is baked in, Tom. And I think the only way for it to be the fight against that is for Joe Biden himself to go out there and say, look, I've been railed against for 3 years now while I've been trying to do this job, and he's got to go out and pitch himself all over again. And fight back finally against what's been said against him for the past 3 years.
You're right, Andy, and he's doing that right now. He's been in a different city almost every day, at least every other day. He's been giving a speech in a different city, about some aspect of his budget or the work he's doing or whatever. It just doesn't get much coverage because he doesn't say stupid things, he doesn't swear, he doesn't threaten to end American democracy. So Trump gets all the publicity, but Joe Biden has been doing that, and I'm sure it's getting regional coverage anyway, which has got to be a good thing.
Wouldn't a good strategy be to maybe alter that slightly by his campaign folks? He's got to get in that news cycle. He's got to get in as Joe Biden. Well,
he's got to drop some F-bombs or something then. I don't know what it's going to take. Yeah, Sean says you don't want him to do that. I agree. He's got to do. I'm a big fan of political theater, of guerrilla theater. I don't know if you remember the patriotic millionaires. During the Bush administration when they would show up this performance group. With top hats and limousines and big signs saying end Social Security, protect our wealth. Stuff like that. We need more political theater, and the Biden administration needs to get better at it, and they need to be getting Kamala Harris out there more too. I realize she's been out quite a bit lately, And I also realize that the campaign doesn't really start until the end of the summer, until the beginning of September. But I think your analysis is accurate, Andy, and an awful lot is already baked in, and that's very problematic.
There's one more thing, Tom. It's just I think that that when Joe does go out, he's got to make sure that he not just emphasizes his accomplishments, but say that he's got to emphasize what's going to happen. For instance, on abortion, you were talking about abortion. Even if Nikki Haley, which seems to be a little bit more a reasonable person compared to Trump, even if she got elected, she would bring with her the same radical nut jobs that want to keep women in a parking lot until they're sick enough to get medical treatment.
That's right. Yeah, and she as much as said so, and this is now the official Republican position, is that women are the property of the state. Once they become pregnant or once they miss their period, that's if you're of childbearing age, you are one moment away from being the property of the state. Andy, thank you for the call. Butch in Donovan, Nebraska. Hey, Butch, what's on your mind today?
Oh, just a couple comments, Tom. This is to Republicans. Be very careful what you wish for. You might get it.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump, Marjorie Greene, it don't matter how much money you got, trash is trash.
Yeah. Yep. I was criticized the other day for calling Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash, but I was using the phrase trailer trash, but having lived in a trailer for 3 years, I'm a little reluctant to use that phrase. But I don't know of a better phrase for than white trash. I don't know why that's something I shouldn't say on the air. Do you, Butch?
What? How low class can you be as to show nude pictures of people in Congress?
Yeah, she held up a picture of Hunter Biden's penis in Congress, and then her colleague Lauren Boebert is,
she ain't got no money though.
Yeah, well, but she's sure having a good time in that theater. So anyway, Butch, I got to move along. Thank you for the call. It's a kind of a grim topic, is it not? Joan in Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Joan, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, I was wondering about the $2 billion that our friend Kushner got from the Arabs.
$2 billion.
Billion, and their philosophy towards women, and whether that money that he has in his possession is helping this country with some of these guys that keep promoting these horrible things for the women of this country. If that money isn't being used to do that to our women, to make our country less a country than it is, and put women at a lower standard. I've never heard it said, but I have thought that feeling for a long time. There's no other reason for him to have $2 billion unless he's using it for something that's unethical.
Yeah, or if he sold, national security information. Turns out Jared Kushner was in the White House, when he was in the White House, he was the person who requested the highest number of national security documents of any of the employees in the White House. And, how many of those things got copied and handed off to Mr. Bonesaw is a matter of speculation. But
I still think the
you think it's about the women?
Issue is bigger and is kept out of the limelight for a purpose. And I will always feel that way. So
I can't dispute it,
I don't know how you feel about it.
I can't dispute that. It's a little more elaborate conspiracy theory, but certainly, abortion is against the law in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi, just basically being a woman is, with any independence is against the law in Saudi Arabia. It's entirely possible. Joan, thank you. Thank you for the call.
1 and 1 make 2. One and one make 2.
There you go. Always has and always will. Thank you. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you so much for taking my call. Regarding Mike Johnson, I wanted to know if you know whatever happened to his removal attempt, and also I wanted to make a comment about the Democrats they need to be offensive, because the Republicans' strategy is to deflect attention from Trump's issues, and so rather than answering questions like, oh, Joe Biden is too old, we need to be attacking Trump with issues like we know Trump now, he wants to defund and probably destroy Social Security and Medicare, and also abortion. I mean, if those two issues, I will be aggressively putting ads on red states about how Trump is going to try to destroy Social Security and Medicare, as well the abortion issue with women. I think that will be a good strategy for the Republicans in red states particularly.
Yeah, you mean for the Democrats.
Yeah. But do you know whatever happened to this Mike Johnson attempt to remove him from Speaker of the House?
I'm not sure what you're talking. You mean they did write into the House rules that if even one member says, I want to challenge the Speaker, that suddenly there has to be a new election. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, Nancy Pelosi proposed an option to remove him because he was stalling on giving aid to Ukraine and stalling on passing any of the bills. Do you remember
I didn't know that anybody had actually put that motion before the House.
Well, that's what my question was. I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge,
anyway.
nobody has made that motion. The Democrats aren't making that motion because, A, they're not in charge, and B, they may well end up with somebody even crazier than Mike Johnson. The Republicans, I think, are afraid of it.
Some of the Republicans were in agreement to remove him as well, I think.
They talked about it, but none of them came forward. Probably the closest is Matt Gaetz, who's very, very angry right now because Johnson, what's his name from California, Kevin McCarthy before him, is allowing this ethics probe. I got to run. Alfredo, thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Michelle in Van Nuys, California. Hey, Michelle, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I can answer part of the question regarding the person who was asking about tax things. I don't know enough about PAC law. Mm-hmm. I'm a tax professional, but I'm not, this is a disclaimer, I'm not giving anybody any tax advice here, okay?
Sure.
But political donations are not taxable. So somebody giving to a political group, you don't get to deduct anything. The PACs, a lot of them are nonprofit, so you can get a deduction. If they gave to Trump as a gift, excluding a PAC or anything, let's say somebody was doing a fundraiser and did a gift, gifts are taxable but to the person giving the gift. And you have an annual exclusion each person, you have an annual exclusion every year. I don't know if they changed the rates for the current year, but it's over 15,000. It's like 16,000 something. You can give to each individual more than 15,000 a year as a gift, and you don't pay tax on it, and it doesn't go against your lifetime gift exemption. And that's the next thing is you have a lifetime gift exemption per individual, or if you're a couple, that's, like $10 million. This was put in during one of the current Republican things, I think Bush, and because it used to only be a few $1 million, and now it's like huge. So you can actually, if you give a large gift to somebody, so let's say somebody had a lot of money and they wanted to give him a gift of $1 million, they just have to fill out a gift tax return and they can apply it against their lifetime exclusion of gifts.
That's interesting.
So there would be no taxes.
Here's the larger frame, Michelle. Let's say that I went out and broke the law, whatever, broke into somebody's car and got arrested or something like that, and then I create an organization. I create a corporation, and I even try to get 501c3 status for it to collect money to pay for my legal fees. isn't my legal fee a personal expense? How can a nonprofit organization, or any organization for that matter, pay for my legal fees and not have it be considered personal income to me?
Well, see, that gets into that I'd really have to look at the technicalities, because that would be a question of who they're donating the money to. So is it a PAC? Is it this? Is it that? And then what the intent is? Because
right, but he's deriving the benefit from it. He's deriving the benefit of the lawyer's activities.
But I could sit there and say, I know that you personally right now, you had some major legal expenses. Some idiot sued you. Well, I could give you a gift. That's not taxable. I don't specify, so I could easily get around that by saying I'm giving you a gift.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying I'm giving you a gift for legal fees. I'm giving you a gift.
Right,
however
period.
you use it is your choice.
Right. Huh. Interesting.
Right,
so the key to it is that gifts are taxable to the giver, not to the recipient.
Correct. And there's exclusions every year.
Sure.
You can give a certain amount every year, and then you have your lifetime exclusion.
I did not know that. I remember that, in fact, I read an article a while ago about how, for boomers doing estate planning and stuff, you can give a little more than $15,000 to each one of your kids every year. But that's kind of the limit of my knowledge. So thank you, Michelle.
Right, but there's also an annual exclusion, and then there's also exclusions if you can give more if you're giving to somebody's education also. That's also a gift that's on top of the annual $15,000 plus.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for making us all smarter. I appreciate it. We'll be right back. Help support Progressive Radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'm picking up your calls. Marcus in Chicago. Hey, Marcus. Thanks for listening to WCPT. What's on your mind today?
All right, Tom. How you doing? Hey, look. This is something that baffles me. Maybe you're smarter than I am. Maybe you can answer. You hear all of these people, especially on the Republican side, talking about Social Security is on its way out because it's not receiving enough money. Same thing with Medicare. My question is this: I don't know how many undocumented people are living and working in the United States, especially with the Dreamers, but they're paying in to FICA, Medicare.
The best estimate is 15 million of them. Yeah.
Where is all of that money going since they can't get it back on
that money is that money is subsidizing the retirement benefits and the SSI benefits of citizens like you and me.
Why are they saying that everything is on the purposes of going broke?
Well, because it's still not enough. I mean, the problem is, with or without the undocumented workers who are, paying into Social Security, which is not inconsequential. I mean, that's billions of dollars, probably hundreds of billions of dollars a year. I'd have to look it up to get the exact number, but it's substantial. But the problem is that if you earn over $165,000 a year, roughly, it's like $167,300 or something like that. If you earn over $160,000 a year, you no longer pay Social Security taxes.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but they're never going to change that rule.
I think they will. I really do. I think if the Democrats take the House and hold the Senate and hold the White House, I believe that they will do that, because that one fix.
Well, maybe if the citizens push for it, maybe they will.
Yeah.
But other than that,
we need to. We need to, because it's an instant fix. It's just, just let the rich pay the same amount as a bus driver. Let a billionaire pay the same amount into Social Security, same percentage of his income into Social Security as a bus driver, and the Social Security problem is solved. I mean, this is not rocket science. So, yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, there you go. Marcus, thank you for the call. Always nice to hear from you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Lawrence in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Hey, Lawrence, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Approximately 25% of the American voters believe that Biden was elected illegitimately and is not a legitimate president.
Yeah, roughly half of Republicans, yeah.
Almost 70%, something on the order of 68%, according to recent polls,
which presumably includes some independents and Democrats, believe that there is at least some fire to the smoke that the Republicans keep throwing up about Biden's getting money, Joe Biden getting money from federal governments and being corrupt.
Right.
That's
from
Ukraine. That's penetrated the national consciousness. There's no evidence whatsoever for either of those things being true. However, these huge numbers of Americans believe this. Here's my question for you, Tom. How do we on the left counter that? How do we get control of the narrative back?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm booting up my 360 here because there's an FDR quote that goes with this, but I may have to wait just a moment. I think the way that we counter it, frankly, is by calling it out. I mean that's what we have to do. FDR had listen to this. This is Franklin Roosevelt.
Remember, a number of years ago, there was a book, Mein Kampf, written by Hitler himself. The technique was all set out in Hitler's book, and it was copied by the aggressors of Italy and Japan. According to that technique, you should never use a small falsehood, always a big one, for its very fantastic nature would make it more credible. If only you keep repeating it over and over and over again.
There you go. And that's what Trump has been doing with the lie about, having lost the election. And that's what Comer and Jordan are doing with these lies about Biden having some skeezy business operations going in Ukraine. It's the big lie, and we need to call it out. We need to say exactly what FDR said. This is Hitler's big lie strategy that the GOP has embraced as policy. Make sense, Lawrence?
Yes.
Okay.
I still don't know quite how we fight it, though.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think we're just going to have to do it with words. Lawrence, thank you for the call. Evelyn in Seattle. Hey, Evelyn, I have a little less than a minute here left. I'm sorry to be so brief, but what's up?
Hey, I was just listening to what you were saying about the state of Louisiana and the abortion thing and women having to go through C-sections
right.
to take a little bit of fluid out of them. That's just crazy for me. I am surprised that we didn't see a lot more people organize, and especially men help women march the streets and fight for this. This is taking a lot of our rights away. And I find it hypocritical that a lot of the far-right Republicans that are pushing for this are the same ones that were crying about bodily autonomy when they were wanting to get the vaccination during COVID.
Oh, you're right.
It doesn't make sense.
You're absolutely right. How dare you make me wear a mask or get a vaccine? Yeah. Yeah, no, you're spot on, Evelyn. Thank you very much for that. That was brilliant. All right. Thank you so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. Otherwise, it's not democracy. And we're creeping closer and closer to oligarchy every day. We've got to get our democracy back, which means make sure that you're registered to vote. You can do it at vote.org. Make sure all your friends are registered to vote. And when the election time comes around, kick their butts, get them out there. Make sure. We've got to take this country back. Tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Hey, exciting news. Today is the first match day of this spring fund drive, which means that the frontline funders, these just wonderful people, I'll be giving you a list, later on in the week or next week, but the frontline funders really stepped up this year. Your gift up to $10,000 will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give 20, it becomes 40. If you give 100, it becomes 200, like that. There's also a bunch of great premiums for Free Speech TV. With a $20 gift, there's the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the vote button, or the This Is Not Normal bumper sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV spring tote bag or the keychain. With a $75 gift, it's the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, there's an autographed copy of my latest book, The Hidden History of American Democracy. With a $200 gift, it's Cozy Up with the Free Speech TV blue blanket. $240, the virtual meet and greet. $1,000, the Hidden History book collection, the all 9 books, or a meet and greet here in Portland. And so while you're dialing 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org to make your contribution, here is John Kennedy from the debate with Richard Nixon on October 21st, 1960 in New York City.
I said that I've served this country for 14 years. I served it in the war. I'm devoted to it. If I lose this election, I will continue in the Senate to try to build a stronger country. But I run because I believe this year the United States has a great opportunity to make a move forward, to make a determination here at home and around the world that it's going to reestablish itself as a vigorous society. My judgment is that the Republican Party has stood still here in the United States, and it's also stood still around the world. We're using about 50% of our steel capacity today. We had a recession in '58. We had a recession in '54. Not moving ahead in education the way we should. We didn't make a judgment in '57 and '56 and '55 and '54 that outer space would be important. If we stand still here, if we appoint people to ambassadorships and positions in Washington who have a status quo outlook, who don't recognize that this is a revolutionary time, then the United States does not maintain its influence. And if we fail, the cause of freedom fails. I believe it incumbent upon the next president of the United States to get this country moving again, to get our economy moving ahead, to set before the American people its goals, its unfinished business, and then throughout the world, appoint the best people we can get, ambassadors who can speak the language, not merely people who made a political contribution, but who can speak the language, bring students here, let them see what kind of a country we have. Mr. Nixon said that we should not regard them as pawns in the Cold War. We should identify ourselves with them. If that were true, why didn't we identify ourselves with the people of Africa? Why didn't we bring students over here? Why did we suddenly offer Congo 300 students last June when they had the tremendous revolt? That was more than we had offered to all of Africa the year before from the federal government. I believe that this party, Republican Party, has stood still really for 25 years, its leadership has. It opposed all of the programs of President Roosevelt and others for minimum wage and for housing and economic growth and development of our natural resources, the Tennessee Valley and all the rest. And I believe that if we can get a party which believes in movement, which believes in going ahead, then we can reestablish our position in the world. Strong defense, strong in economic growth, justice for our people, guarantee of constitutional rights so that people will believe that we practice what we preach, and then around the world, particularly to try to reestablish the atmosphere which existed in Latin America at the time of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a good neighbor in Latin America because he was a good neighbor in the United States, because they saw us as a society that was compassionate, that cared about people, that was moving this country ahead. I believe it my responsibility as the leader of the Democratic Party in 1960 to try to warn the American people that in this crucial time, we can no longer afford to stand still. We can no longer afford to be second best. I want people all over the world to look to the United States again, to feel that we're on the move, to feel that our high noon is in the future. I want Mr. Khrushchev to know that a new generation of Americans who fought in Europe and Italy and the Pacific for freedom in World War II have now taken over in the United States, and that they're going to put this country back to work again. I don't believe that there's anything this country cannot do. I don't believe there's any burden or any responsibility that any American would not assume to protect his country, protect our security, to advance the cause of freedom. And I believe it incumbent upon us now to do that. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1936 that that generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. I believe in 1960 and 61 and 2 and 3, we have a rendezvous with destiny. And I believe it incumbent upon us to be the defenders of the United States and the defenders of freedom. And to do that, we must give this country leadership, and we must get America moving again.
Now, Vice President.
There you go. President John Kennedy making his closing argument in 1960, and it went very well for him. And this is another revolutionary moment. This is another really critical time in American history right now. And we need your help to keep this network going and to keep this message, the message of my program and the other great programs on Free Speech TV, to keep these messages going and frankly, to grow even. And like I said, I keep telling you, it's a tough time during an election year. So please call now or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Thank you so much for supporting Free Speech TV.